Okay, I'm gonna.
Are we ready?
We are, Chair.
Okay, all right. Let's continue.
Dr. Nteta, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I've also moved location.
But that's fine. So yes, I was explaining to you that at the same time as this was happening, the acquisition process of OCM by Tegeta was also ongoing. And from the evidence of one of the witnesses before the commission, Mr. Piers Marsden, who was the business rescue practitioner of OCM at the time, we understand that on the 8th, he had been approached by Mr. Hauer, Nazim Hauer, with an explanation that Tegeta had a shortfall of 600 million rand towards the purchase price of OCM. And he requested Mr. Marsden to approach the banks, it's a consortium of banks, to either defer the payment of the 600 million rand or to afford Tegeta a bridging loan. The banks, when approached, refused the request. Were you aware of that?
No, I was not aware of that.
And that in fact, it was around 1500 on the 8th of April 2016 that Mr. Marsden communicated the bank's refusal to Mr. Hauer. And it seems to us, and I refer to the Commission, emanating from that evidence.
You want to say the legal team?
The legal team.
Yeah.
Thank you, pardon. Thank you, Chair. It seems to the legal team that emanating from that evidence that the prepayment we are now talking about, which forms which is at the center of your submission, would have come about. Your comment?
I'm not sure that you completed the point. You want to just start again? I think you didn't complete the point properly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what you are suggesting is that what you are suggesting to her is that it seems that the prepayment that she's talking about in her submission is connected with the amount that Tegeta was looking for, which they could not get from the banks.
Correct, sir.
Yes. What do you hear the point, Dr. Nteta?
Yes, I do.
What do you say to the suggestion that it just seems too coincidental that initially around the end of March, Mr. Nath didn't talk to you about a prepayment, but somewhere around, as I understand your evidence, 7, 8, or 8, 9, or thereabout of April, he introduced the idea of a prepayment, and Mr. Seleka is saying it so happens that attempts by them to find a bank to give them that amount or to defer an amount that they owed to the bank had failed, and the amount that became the prepayment was around about the same amount that they needed. Mr. Selega, tell me if I have misrepresented your point.
It's not misrepresented, Chairperson. Chairperson is
Yes.
correct.
What do you say to that, Dr. Nteta?
Thank you. I must say there's little that I can make comment, because I was not aware of the information that you're saying to me, that in terms of at that time they were looking to get I think you just said the 600 million, and it was declined. So at the time when I was discussing with Mr. Nath, you are quite correct in saying that the initial discussions that we did have, which was before the 8th, was purely about provision of coal. And there was no indication with regards to the prepayment. So the investigators and the evidence leaders, in having an understanding of what was happening in the background, that may be the case, but I really cannot comment on it. What I can comment on is that Mr. Nath indicated to me round about between the 6th and the 8th, that there's a precondition for the coal. Whether it is linked to their requirement for funding, etc., I can't comment, because I didn't know that background at the time.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I want to quickly cover certain points with you, then you can move on in your evidence, Dr. Nteta. Dr. Nteta, the paragraph we read from your affidavit, which explicitly says, Mr. Nath indicated that Tegeta was going to buy coal from OCM to supply to Eskom. Do you know why Eskom did not procure coal directly from OCM?
So we didn't get it directly from OCM because the business rescue practitioner had indicated that they were not going to supply us with coal. Secondly, they had, the year before, had actually stopped in terms of the production of coal. So that is why we did not specifically go directly to OCM. And then thirdly, the Tegeta offered that particular coal.
Yeah, but are you saying you didn't know the facts? Because the business rescue practitioners, on 20 August 2015, they communicated that they will stop the supply. But thereafter, and more specifically from the 3rd of September, they continued to supply coal. Even in April 2015, they were supplying coal. 2016, they were supplying coal to the Hendrina power station. Are you saying you didn't know that?
Yes. I knew that they were supplying coal to the Hendrina power station. My understanding, and I will say that I'm not a mining engineer, my understanding is that the coal that they were supplying to Hendrina was for a certain CV, and the coal that they were looking to supply us for Arnott was of a higher CV, which was due to beneficiation to come through, so would become a higher product from their export mine.
I'm sorry, Mr. Selega, can I go back to the issue of Tegeta offering coal, this particular coal? I may have asked this question before, and if I have, you'll forgive me, but I would like to be reminded what the answer was. Isn't the position that the coal that Tegeta was offering Eskom did not at that stage belong to Tegeta?
So my understanding, and that's my understanding from the evidence of the transaction, that the transaction was due to, I think let me just answer your question directly. No, it did not belong to Tegeta. They had taken over the operations of the mine only.
Could they offer coal to Eskom that did not belong to them?
So yes, they could offer coal that did not belong to them. In my discussions with Mr. Nath around January or so, he'd indicated that they had taken over the operations of the mine. So that, for me, I understood it to mean that then they would then indicate where the coal goes, etc. But in terms of offering coal that does not belong to a mine, yes, a supplier can do so.
Well, I don't understand the concept of them being able to offer Eskom coal that did not belong to them just because they had taken over the operations of the mine, unless the arrangement was such that the owner of the coal allowed them to offer coal to somebody. Are you able to clarify that for me? Is this something that used to happen as a practice or custom in the coal sector as far as Eskom is concerned?
So correctly so, that you would get somebody who doesn't actually own the asset offering the coal. So what would happen in other instances as well, you'd have what we call a marketing agent, who would then be the individual that is marketing the coal, and they don't necessarily own that coal, but they offer the coal.
But
so
I take it.
Yes.
But I take it that if they are a marketing agent, either when you conclude a contract concerning that coal, you conclude it with the owner, or if you conclude it with the marketing agent, the contract of the coal being offered to you, that the agent would be doing so with the authorization of the owner. I may be missing something, but if I give you my taxi for you to drive, you can start selling it. That's where I'm coming from. But I may be missing something because I've never worked at Eskom and I've never worked in the coal sector. You understand what I'm talking about. The driver, as a driver of my taxi, if I employ you, it may well be that you can conclude an arrangement with somebody who says, tomorrow, please take me to Durban, we'll come back in the evening and I'll pay you. How much will it cost? You do that. That money is supposed to come to me, the owner. But you can't start selling the car. You understand?
if I try and use that particular example, and it's going to be an attempt to use that example, it would be that if you ask me to take me from Johannesburg to Durban in a taxi that the driver does not own, but I will pay the driver for taking me there. So the driver would then have to pay the taxi owner in terms of
to hand over the money.
For the usage of the car, of the taxi.
To hand over the money that you have paid to the driver.
Yes.
Yes, no, I accept that. But it just seems to me that the selling of the coal seems to be something different, but maybe I missed something. So because I just want to understand why you were not waiting until Tegeta had concluded its transaction with OCM. Then they would be the lawful owners of the coal, I would imagine. But in the meantime, why not negotiate with the owners as far as the coal is concerned?
Yes, as I indicated, the direct owners were not offering in terms of the coal to Eskom. And I'm also providing you this response with hindsight, obviously. So the direct owners were not, and Tegeta was offering that particular coal. They had offered it in January as well as in February, as the evidence leader had said. And so they had demonstrated the ability to provide us with the coal. So, which is why we were then getting coal from them. The question as to why not wait until the transaction is concluded. One of the reasons why it was not waiting is that at the time we were looking for coal. There was, as I indicated at the very beginning, we'd had what we have as a primary energy tactical command center that was meeting quite regularly because of an issue for coal. So the option of waiting until the transaction was concluded was limited, and I will say not as attractive, because we from the fuel sourcing side had pressure to acquire coal. And the last interaction that we did have in terms of that needing to require coal was at the tactical command center of the 8th of April, where they instructed myself and the team to secure coal.
Of course.
I've tried to answer you as best as
yes,
I can.
no, that's fine. But of course, the moment you say to me, the owner of the coal was against giving you the coal, that seems to make your situation worse, because it means you know that the owner of the coal doesn't want to give the coal to you for whatever reasons, valid or not valid, and somebody else who's not the owner of the coal comes to you and offers you somebody else's coal, and you know that somebody else doesn't want this coal to be offered to you. Doesn't that make it worse? It looks like collusion between Eskom and Tegeta to do something that on the face of it appears to me, to say the least, strange.
So, Chairperson, it's not unusual, and it's an unfortunate situation that Eskom would find ourselves in, where you would have a owner of the coal indicating that they do not want to directly transact with Eskom. Some of the owners might have said to us, well, you, Eskom, are looking in terms of broad-based Black economic empowerment, and I, as the owner of the asset, am not interested. So therefore, you deal with our marketing agent, or they just do not want to deal with Eskom's reasons. So it's not Unfortunately, it is not uncommon that happens where the asset owner just says, I don't want to deal with Eskom. I will give my call to somebody and they will deal with it.
But in this case, was it such a situation? I mean, the scenario you tell me seems to me that it's a scenario where the owner may, for whatever reason, not want to deal with Eskom, but actually, when the marketing agent or whoever deals with Eskom, they do so with the blessing or permission of the owner, in the sense that the owner knows that the third party or the marketing agent will actually be doing this. They may just have some other reasons why the owner doesn't want to deal with, but it seems that the owner has no objection. But in this particular case, are you able to say the rescue practitioners had no objection to Tegeta offering you OCM's coal at that time?
I would say at the time, I would assume they had no objection because they were supplying that coal from OCM. So which they've done so on 2 previous agreements. So I will say that at the time, I will assume that they don't have an objection. I would also assume, and I'm saying so based on at the time, that the business rescue practitioner was aware where that coal was going. To answer you.
Mr. Selega? No,
yes,
complete your answer, Dr. Nteta.
Yeah. So when I was providing you with the example to say that happens in other situations, because you had asked me, is it not unusual? So I was just indicating that no, it is not unusual where we would deal with somebody, not the asset owner.
Okay. Mr. Selega?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dr. Nteta, I'm not sure whether your answers are given on the basis of a factual premise from what happened at that time, or are you simply trying to reason out the actions of Eskom? One of the things you mentioned is that you had been instructed to go out and look for coal. But we know that in this factual situation, you didn't go out to Tegeta. Tegeta came to you with an unsolicited offer. So the two don't connect. That you were instructed to go out and look for coal, but what we see here is the other way around, and that is what Mr. Khoza expresses as a point of concern in his affidavit, that this was not Eskom's initiative. It was Tegeta coming to Eskom unsolicited. Your comment?
Okay. I'm going to comment, and through my comment, I'm going to ask if I can refer to certain documents. The first document that I'm going to ask to refer to, because I want to then just try and create the timeline in terms of this particular transaction that we're looking at. The first document, and I'm going to really try and refer to it correctly, is in the Eskom Bundle 18, page 891. Eskom Bundle 18, page 891.
It seems to be 18B, 18 bracket B.
Oh gosh. Okay, maybe it's B. I don't know if it's A or B. Can I continue?
Not yet. Let's find the document first.
Okay.
It's page 891.
891. Yes.
Yes, I am at page 891, bundle 18.
Okay. So to answer the question in terms of, looking for coal and the supplier coming through, Tegeta, yes, came through and indicated that they had a coal, and I'd indicated earlier that probably from about March, they'd said that our current supply is coming to an end, and we have availability to provide you, continued coal, and that is when I refer to saying that the supplier came to me. That is what they would do. A supplier would do that in the normal course, because if they've got coal, they always want to extend in terms of their particular offering. Now, I've referred to this particular page, and I'm going to refer to another page to then indicate that when you look in terms of this, it's an email that was written from what we will call our coal operations, coal demand side. So from a fuel sources perspective, the demand or the requirement for coal then comes from the coal demand side. And we received this coal. Now, we received this email. When we get this email, and I'm just going to try and provide context, the highlight of the email there, she indicates is good morning, and please find attached the status report. And she's underlined in that particular email the power station in terms of Arnott, because it was a concern in terms of us being able to secure coal for Arnott. And she indicates there that is deliveries that were due to come to the power station. I'm just going to use rounded off to say it's 14 kilotons against a plan of 22. What that translates is that we are not delivering the required amount of coal to that particular power station. The second element, and that is a concern, because we need to ensure that we are meeting whatever is planned. So we are under, not as we, the primary energy is underperforming. Her next sentence indicates that the burn is 15 kilotons, in terms of they are burning 15 kilotons against what the power station had indicated to us, is that they should rather burn 14 kilotons. That also then, so the picture that she's highlighting in those statements is simply saying that we are getting too little coal into Arnott, and we are burning than what we're supposed to, against a burn that is even more. So then it creates an issue in terms of supply. You'll notice that this particular email is sent at 8:39 in the morning. I'm now going to, so this is on the 8th. I've been discussing with Mr. Na, correctly so, predominantly about just supplying coal. Because one, in that period of time, we do understand that we need coal for Arnott, because we are being advised of this quite often, that we need to ensure that we secure this particular coal. So he offers me this coal. And I then looked and noting that the organization in the primary energy does have an issue that in terms of getting coal. So that is sort of when I'm trying to answer one, Mr. Khoza's indication that if there was a problem, then why did we not go to them? Well, the problem intensified on and about the 8th of April. And so knowing that we do have a potential for receiving the coal from this particular supply is one of the elements that myself and my team act on. I then want to refer you to, on the same day, so we have this email coming in at about 8, and there's a concern within the department. They then call that PED Tactical Command Center. I'm now going to refer to Mr. Koko's affidavit, and that is MMK 53, which is the Eskom bundle 15 of 864, page 864. And I will pause.
Chair, I don't think you will have that. I don't think the chairperson will have.
Pardon?
No, I'm speaking now to the chairperson.
Oh,
Eskom
okay.
bundle 15, I don't think the chairperson will have it.
I can read it out. Not, sorry, evidence leader.
Okay, you can do that.
Quiet.
Have we got it somewhere?
I have it here, sir.
Yes, okay. She can read it out in the meantime, if it's not too long.
Please, just give us the reference again, page number.
MMK 53, and then it's in the bundle 15, page 864.
864. Page 864.
I'm unclear as to whether I should read it. Yes.
Yes.
You may read it.
Yeah. Let me just identify the document for the chairperson. Page 864 of bundle 15, chairperson. Now, minutes of a meeting of Primary Energy Division Tactical Command Center held on the 8th of April 2016. Ms. Nteta, you may read the portion you want to draw to the chairperson's attention.
Okay. So the first element is that if you noted the email that was sent at about 8:39 in the morning, and it creates a concern in terms of the department, and a tactical command center meeting is then convened. The time there is indicated 1 o'clock. And this is because there's the division within primary energy that activates the demand, notice a concern, and then says, let us convene and try and address the concern. I want to then refer you to, in that same document, so I've referred you to the time in an effort just to share with you how we get to the submission and things like that as well. I then look to then refer you to the next page, which is 865. And then we go to the last page, 865. At the bottom, it then talks to some of the issues and the concerns that are raised.
It is.
Sorry?
No, I wanted to confirm that you are still on the same bundle.
Sorry?
I wanted to confirm that you are still on the same bundle. How come I don't have that bundle? Is it because it was not expected that the bundle would be referred to?
It was, we thought she would refer to the affidavit of Mr. Kokoche. The chairperson, we can sanitize mine for the chairperson.
No, it's fine. I'm just trying to understand so that we can make sure next time we don't find ourselves in the same situation. No, that's fine. Let's continue. As long as we don't find ourselves in the same situation.
Okay. I apologize.
No, it's fine. Okay, you may continue.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of that, there are certain aspects that are in terms of that minutes, and it's. I think perhaps I'm just trying to show that the turn of events. So on this day, there's discussions with regards to Mr. Mabilani about the submission. There's discussions with regards to the supplier about the submission. There's also this requirement in terms of the coal that has been indicated to the fuel sourcing department. One of the key actions that comes out of there is that if you look at bullet point 3, so if you look at item 4, bullet point 3, it then talks to the R0 RFP, once again just indicating that there's a concern, and we discussed it at this particular meeting. And it's indicated that there's a shortfall from May, which needs to be addressed, and DM, which is the chairperson of the Tactical Command Center, advised that AN, which is myself, now needs to develop a proposal for the shortfall coal, and agree this with Vusi and Machela, which is Mr. Mboweni and Mr. Koko.
Dr. Nteta.
So,
Dr. Nteta.
yes.
Okay. The chairperson needs to follow what you are saying. So can you again indicate where you are reading from in terms of on that page 8?
Okay.
Are you reading from page 865?
I'm reading on page 865. There
Yes.
are items that are there. I'm looking at item 4.
Yes.
And in item 4, I'm going to call it bullet point number 3.
Okay, it's written number 3.
Which starts, yes, it's written number 3.
Yes.
And it starts R0 RFP.
Yes, just read it then to the chairperson. Read it on record.
In full. Okay. R0 RFP going through MCK process. MCK was standing for McKinsey. Will take coal delivery to March 2017. So that's the R0 RFP. The next sentence,
No.
the shortfall from May 20.
Sorry, just before you proceed
Yes.
there, explain to the chairperson that first sentence. R0 RFP, that's a request for proposal. Going through McKinsey process, you say MCK stands for McKinsey process, will take coal delivery to March 2017. Can you explain that to the chairperson, please? What does that mean?
So during this period, one of the yes, I'm trying to explain the sentence in context.
Yes, proceed.
Should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So during the process of, I'm going to say from the 1st of January 2016, R0 Power Station, which was previously supplied coal by Exaro, as well as other suppliers, that Exaro contract had been terminated. We discussed it before, but I will remind, it was terminated, and there was a dispute between Eskom and Exaro, which we discussed before. So we had issued a request for proposal to replace the coal that would have replaced the allocation of Exaro with this RFP, as well as the other suppliers that were currently supplying R0. And that's what was in relation to the R0 RFP. Now, the MCK process is that it was in terms of we had McKinsey within Eskom, also within Primary Energy, that were looking in terms of assisting on negotiations, looking in terms of costing and things like that. So that's when we sort of saying we call it the MCK process.
Yes.
Yes. I'm trying to explain that sentence.
Yes, proceed. Well, there are
Okay.
questions
Okay,
regarding
all right,
Azaro.
sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Proceed.
So then the next sentence read, the shortfall from May 2016 needs to be addressed. And then DM, which is the chairperson of the Tactical Command Center, advised that AN, which is myself, now needs to develop a proposal for the shortfall code and agree this with Vusi and Machela.
Yes.
I will then take you also to the next page, which is page 866.
Just before you do that, before you do that, explain to the chairperson the last sentence you read.
Okay, not a problem. So the last sentence that I read was that I would need to engage with Mr. Mboweni and Mr. Koko with regards to, in essence, what it's saying is that to address in terms of that shortfall for Arnold, because there was a concern about it and it indicated that I was instructed to engage with them on it.
Is there a reason why you didn't mention this document in your affidavit?
To be very honest with you, I didn't have it. I didn't see it. It was actually when I was going through this particular Mr. Koko's affidavit that I saw this particular the actual minutes. So what I did recall in my discussions with investigators, I did say that we had a tactical command center where, the demand is raised and, the demand is raised and then we would act on it. But I didn't have access to the minutes.
Mr. Selega,
Sorry?
I understood
Pardon?
Dr. Nteta to be referring to these, I think it's now 2 documents, or is it 1?
It's 1.
I understood her to be referring to that document or those documents in order to answer a question that you had put to her based on what Mr. Koza had said.
Yes.
Do you want to just repeat that question? Because I'm not sure that I get the connection between what is in the documents based on what Dr. Nteta is saying and that question.
That's correct, Chair. Dr. Nteta, you will recall. Dr. Nteta, you will recall that Mr. Koza finds it surprising. And he says the approach here to offer coal was not done by Eskom. It was not Eskom's initiative approaching Tegeta. It was Tegeta approaching Eskom.
Yes.
So his point is, and I think it deals exactly with what you're trying to say now, which is, if you say there was a shortfall, why didn't Eskom take the initiative to address the shortfall? Instead, Tegeta was the one that approaches you with this prepayment request.
I'm trying to answer that particular question in giving context and maybe it's
Can I?
I'm losing the context.
Maybe we should.
What I'm trying to
Dr.
say.
Dr. Nteta, I'm sorry. Maybe let's do it this way.
Yes.
Give me your answer to what Mr. Koza is saying about your version. And then once you have given me the answer, and you can say, in support of this answer, if we go to this document or that document, we will find that it supports my answer by saying A, B, C, D. Maybe it will be easy to follow it like that.
Okay.
In other words, give your answer
So-
without going to the document first to say, this is my response. And then you say, this document here, there's a document that supports what I'm saying, and this is the document, and this is how it supports me.
Okay. So my response to Mr. Khoza saying that if there was a requirement for coal, he finds it strange that Tegeta would then come and offer us coal and we would not be looking for coal. My response is that we were looking for coal, and looking for coal is in different forms. Some of it is where a supplier will come and say, I have coal, particularly if their contract is expiring and there is a need to, and they have coal available. So we were looking for coal.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that Mr. Khoza's point, and I say nothing about its merits, I'm just saying his point seems to be not necessarily that you are not looking for coal, generally speaking, but that you are not the ones who went to Tegeta and said, have you got coal for us? So, but based on what you're saying, I think your answer would be yes, we did. We are not the ones who approached Tegeta. They approached us.
Correct.
Yes. I haven't looked at Mr. Khoza's affidavit. I'm not sure that his point connects
Please.
properly, because if we are in need of coal and somebody happens to be in need of a contract with us, we are looking for coal, we are looking for somebody who can sell us coal, somebody is looking for somebody who needs coal, and they approach us, why is it a big issue? But I may be missing something because I haven't refreshed my memory on his affidavit. But you might be able to say that there is something that I may be missing in his point.
Chair, I think the emphasis in his affidavit is about what was communicated to them or to him in person prior to the submission being made to the BTC. And he says we were approached on the basis that Tegeta wants to supply coal. But it turns out that they wanted a prepayment. So he makes these 2 points that on the one hand, if you say there was a shortfall, you don't seem to have taken the initiative to approach them. They are the ones who came to you, one. And on the other hand, we were told it's for coal, but now the submission says it's for prepayment. And he distinguishes between the two. So we were on the first leg of it, and I hear what the chairperson is saying. I may have to read from his affidavit, Chair.
Yes, you see, I can understand if he has a concern that they were not told about the prepayment requirement up to whatever time, or they were never told at all. That I can understand, but I think that's a separate point.
Yes.
The one about it was not Eskom who approached Tegeta, I'm not sure that I follow it. But if maybe later on you have a look and you think there is something in it, then maybe you could try again. You could revive it.
Yes, Chair.
You may have refreshed your memory recently, and but I'm just saying that I mean, if you have need for coal and somebody needs a buyer of coal, you might, you know, it's easy to see how it could happen. You know, somebody phones you and say, I've got coal. You say, oh, you know, it's as if you knew my situation. I actually need coal right now. I need it yesterday. Let's talk about money, you know.
Yeah. I think, Chairperson, we should look at it against the backdrop of what was happening at the time, Dr. Nteta, because Tegeta was already having short-term contracts with Eskom from January 2016, and the second one in February 2016, which was going to expire. Is it the 15th or the 18th of April 2016?
I actually think it's either the 13th or the 15th of April. So let's settle on the 15th based on a common date that we have. But
Yes.
I'm not sure.
So
I think it's the 15th. Yeah. Because you think it's the 18th.
Yeah. So these were contracts that were short-term, already together, buying from OCM to supply to Eskom at Arnott Power Station. Correct? Speak out. You can speak out.
Yes. So those were already the two contracts that they had. Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure I heard the question.
Yes, those were the two contracts that we Tegeta had with Eskom. And then you have this time around, and you see there are various reasons given why Tegeta made the approach. One of the reasons is that Tegeta wanted an extension of the contract.
Correct. I'm not sure if you're frozen or...
Do you want her to comment on that?
Yes, you confirm that that is one of the reasons why Tegeta, or was given as Tegeta approaching Eskom.
I was given by whom?
Yeah, so one of the reasons for...
Okay. You, in your submission...
Can I ask you to repeat the question, please?
Yes, we are repeating it. The technology is too slow. In your submission to the BTC, you gave as a reason for the submission that Tegeta wanted to extend the existing contract.
Yes.
So, on the one hand, that's the reason given. And on the other hand, which is now a different aspect altogether, the focus of our attention, of our inquiry as well, is that you requested that a prepayment be made to Tegeta in that submission.
So the supplier was looking to oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The technology is giving us a problem. But I wanted to say, Mr. Selega, where what you say to her is not in the form of a question, you want her to comment, just make it clear that you are asking her to comment, yes, because sometimes she's not sure whether you expect her to say anything or whether you are still continuing.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Nteta, I'll make it clear to you. So the the submission also included the issue of a prepayment request by the supply. Can you comment on that? Or shall I say you confirm that?
Yes.
Now,
Yes, the submission also spoke to a
Yes.
prepayment.
yeah,
May I just ask this question, not about your evidence? Are you able to see the evidence leader from where you are, Dr. Nteta?
oh, yeah.
Because that might be causing the problem because,
Yes, I am.
or you are able to see him.
Yes. So what happens, which maybe we can solve, is that I see him after a while. Like, for example, I see a screen of myself talking. And then if you talk, it will move to you, and then it slowly gets to him.
So it takes some time. So you can't always tell whether he's done with the question or comment. Then you have to wait until there is some silence. Then you think, okay, he's done. Then you start answering. But in the meantime, that can be quite a delay. The
Correct.
technicians, do they hear that? Can they try and sort that out, please? Okay, all right, let's continue. I'm hoping the technicians heard that
Yes.
and that they try and sort it out.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Nteta, I just want to read these passages from Dr. Khoza's affidavit so that I can expedite the process. Chairperson is in Eskom Bundle 14, 14 bracket A, on page 422.13.13.
Just repeat the page.
422.13.
Okay.
And I would like to read from paragraph 57 to 59.
Yeah, go ahead if Dr. Nteta is ready. Have you found it, Dr. Nteta?
You can go ahead. I'm getting there, but I will listen to what you are saying.
Okay.
So in his affidavit, Mr. Khoza writes, paragraph 57, I have taken note of Nteta's affidavit, and I wish to point out that at paragraph 8.3 of her affidavit, she states that she was approached by Tegeta in early April 2016 with an offer to supply coal to Eskom from OCM. She then goes on to state that in subsequent discussions with Tegeta, she was advised that Tegeta would require a prepayment for the coal. This version must be contrasted with the board submission which I received, which essentially indicated that there was an urgent need to secure coal to avoid load shedding. From Nteta's affidavit, it is clear that the request for a prepayment followed the unsolicited bid which Tegeta made to Nteta. It was not Eskom which required coal and then approached Tegeta, which stated coal can only be extended if a prepayment is made. It appears that it is Tegeta that approached Nteta. Nteta's affidavit suggests a series of events leading up to 11 April 2016, which differs from the submission which Daniels and Nteta prepared for the board, which they sent to me and other board members on 11 April 2016. So what he's saying is, what you are stating in your affidavit, it's a version different from what was contained in the submission to the board. To the BTC.
Before Dr. Nteta answers, excuse me. Before Dr. Nteta answers, in what way does Mr. Khoza say the two versions are different?
Paragraph 57, Chairperson.
Yeah.
He says he's read the affidavit, paragraph 8.3 of Dr. Nteta. She then goes on to state that in the subsequent discussions with Tegeta, she was advised that Tegeta would require prepayment. Then he says this version must be contrasted with the board submission which I received, which essentially indicated that there was an urgent need to secure coal. So,
Yeah, but it's the same point I think I raised earlier on. I don't see the point.
he's dealing with two aspects there, Chair.
Yeah,
One is the issue of the prepayment, and the other is what the chairperson has in mind, which is who approached who first, which is what comes in paragraph 58.
yes, about the one about who approaches who first.
Yes.
I'm not sure that I see what's important about who approached who first, unless
Yes.
there is something else. Otherwise, it's taken us too much time to try and figure out what his point is on that, and what is the other point he's making.
Yes, which is what I want to move on to the prepayment requirement.
Yeah.
And
Okay, I think move on to that one.
yes, so then the prepayment requirement, Ms. Nteta, which Mr. Koza says that request should be contrasted with what had been given to them as the BTC. And you will recall in one of the paragraphs, he says the prepayment was in fact underplayed. It was kind of hidden away from the board and not made the dominant feature of that submission. So, Chairperson, if I may, that's paragraph 46 of his affidavit. So you'll go to the page, just 2 pages backwards.
He suggests that the submission that Dr. Nteta prepared for the BTC made no reference to the requirement of a prepayment.
No, that it was diminished. So it was made an insignificant aspect of the submission. You will see in the paragraph I'm about to refer to, Chair.
Well, let's go to the paragraph in the submission.
Paragraph 46, Chair.
I mean, that is of his affidavit.
Correct, Chairperson.
But it says what you have told me already, isn't it?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, let's go to the submission. Let me see this
Let's go to this.
point of Dr. Nteta hiding the issue of the prepayment.
I take exception to that, Chair. That I was hiding it.
Well, maybe I'm
It's in the
attributing to
Tegeta
Mr. Koza
reference bundle.
a verb that he did not use. The submission was at page 190 of which bundle?
It's in the Tegeta reference bundle, Chairperson. Not,
If you find it, you can just read to me, tell me where about it is and why anybody would say it's hidden if it is there in black and white.
Chairperson, are they sanitizing those documents before they give them to you?
Well, I sanitize them myself, but I think they do sanitize them too. I sanitize them myself as well. You're very concerned about that. No, I sanitize them quite a lot, if you have noticed.
exhibit, sorry, Chair. Eskom bundle 18 bracket A, page 297.
Page 2?
Page 297.
297.
290. No, those are the minutes. Those are the minutes. Page 292.
Yes, continue.
Page 292, Chairperson.
Or 292?
292, yes. 292.
Okay.
The other one is the minutes, actually.
Yes.
Chair, I'm putting to Dr. Nteta what the chairperson of the BTC said he understood the matter to be.
But we are coming to this document because we want to see where prepayment is mentioned,
how the
about this thing
prepayment
of hiding it.
Yes, how the prepayment is dealt with.
Where is it mentioned?
It is mentioned, Chairperson, you're on page 292. Turn to page 293. The paragraph just above 3.2. It starts with both suppliers have indicated.
And why is that hiding it?
That's not me, Chairperson.
Well, but you are putting to Dr. Nteta, Mr. Koza's point.
Yeah.
And what's the ultimate point? If she put it in a paragraph that he would not have put it at, it's Dr. Nteta's document, not his. Maybe he would have put it in the first paragraph. So really, doesn't seem to matter to me.
Yeah, well, what he's saying is, Chair, in that paragraph, I refer the chairperson to, he says, significantly the information I received prior to 11 April 2016 meeting was that an extension to a contract was needed, not that 659 million rand was required to be prepaid to the getter. In hindsight, this appears to show that the significance of a prepayment to the getter was diminished and hidden from the board, as it only appears as an ancillary and immaterial aspect in the resolution. That's his version, Chair.
Well,
Which
I don't think we should spend too much time on that version. Let's move on. You would really have to have very cogent reasons to say that somebody, where they chose to mention a point in their document,
yes,
they chose that part of the document because they had ulterior motives to hide the point or to lessen the chances that you would see the point. You would need to have really very cogent reasons, it seems to me.
yeah, and that seems to be the gist of his submissions in the affidavit.
What is your take on it?
Is the question
Well,
being posed to me or to
No,
it's
to
posed
the
to me.
evidence leader.
It's posed to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have taken the view, Chairperson, that the request is not necessarily hidden, but I think to some extent it is diminished, as Mr. Koza says. So it is not made the predominant feature of the submission. But ultimately the BTC did talk about the prepayment in its deliberation.
Yeah, I would have
teleconference.
thought that if you had 5 points you wanted to pursue in his version, if that was going to be a pointed, or it might be a last point. So I think, please, let's
proceed.
let's look at more
Yeah.
important points that.
Yes, no, because, I mean, ultimately, in the telephone conference, members of the BTC did ask about the prepayment. So even if the submission downplayed it, it ultimately it was brought to the fore. Dr. Nteta, talk about the urgency of this matter. You deal with that in your affidavit. There was a BTC meeting scheduled for the 13th of April 2016. Why did this meeting have to take place at 9 o'clock at night on the 11th of April 2016?
I will provide my opinion, but I think the chairperson of the BTC will have to answer that question. In my opinion, and I've indicated in my affidavit, there is no reason why the submission could not take place on the 13th of April.
Thank you. So you are saying to the chairperson, you could comfortably have placed this thing on the agenda of BTC on the 13th?
Correct.
Thank you. Then I would like to...
Well, one of the points that I'm interested in that Mr. Koza made, if I recall correctly, in his evidence, really was that, if I recall correctly, he suggested that Dr. Nteta must have been involved with the arrangement of the meeting, as well as the issues to be discussed at the meeting of the 11th. I think much more than he thought she makes it out to be. I can't remember the exact point, but there was a suggestion. He implied that Dr. Nteta must have been party to knowledge of what was being done. I think he suggested that Dr. Nteta seems to have worked with Ms. Daniels or something, or somebody about the arrangements to have this BTC meeting on the 11th. I may be misrepresenting what he said, but I understood him to be saying Dr. Nteta is not candid in her evidence about what she knew about arrangements to have the BTC meeting take place in the evening of the 11th. She was working with Ms. Daniels to achieve that. Do you have any recollection of something along these lines?
I have, and I'm at the paragraphs relevant to that point, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
That's quite on the face of it, that's an important
Awesome.
issue to look at,
Okay.
yeah.
That's on page, Eskom bundle 14, bracket A, page 422.14. 0.14, 1-4.
Thank you. I've got that.
From paragraph 62. I will read it, Chair. It says, I also raise, and it relates to this, whether the meeting could take place on the 11th or the 13th. I also raise issue with the fact that Nteta innocently suggests at paragraph 8.14 that it is not clear to me the reason for the BTC sitting on 11 April 2016. As in my opinion, the prepayment submission could have been deliberated at the BTC meeting on 13 April 2016. This is extremely deceitful of Nteta to say, since she was working on the 11 April 2016 submission until the late hours of 10 April 2016, and the very same draft submission, which she attaches to her affidavit, which she emailed to Daniels, displays an 11 April 2016 BTC meeting date. Paragraph 63. Had there not been collusion between Daniels and Nteta, the company secretary, Daniels would no doubt have told her that the BTC members would no doubt have told her and the other BTC members that the matter could have been dealt with on 13 April 2016 and not 11 April 2016 as they orchestrated. Furthermore, logically, had they not intended to cause the BTC to sit on 11 April 2016, they would have prepared the submission documents only from 11 April 2016 onwards and sent it to the BTC via email as an addition to the 13 April 2016 submission. Then he goes on to deal with another point. I think that's...
Yes, I think
if that's the...
we should give Dr. Nteta an opportunity to deal with the suggestion by Mr. Khoza that she was being deceitful.
Colluded and orchestrated.
Yes. Do you want to say something about what Mr. Khoza is saying, Dr. Nteta?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I actually have plenty to say about what Mr. Khoza is saying, but I will not go into the detail because I understand that I would like this to be my last appearance. Mr. Khoza has made some very sweeping, unbased allegations with regards to me being instrumental in setting a date and time for a BTC meeting. Mr. Khoza is the chairperson of the board tender committee. He is a board member. At the time, I was a procurement official who is tasked with getting submissions, putting submissions together. Where I sat is a procurement official. I reported to one level, which is the senior general manager within PED. That senior general manager reported into a group executive. That group executive reported into a CEO, and that CEO reported into the board. I provide this context so that we can to allow you to see that the ability for me to then instruct board members of Eskom to sit and deliberate on a transaction is very unlikely, particularly the hierarchical nature of Eskom. So that's one. I never engaged with Mr. Khoza at any point with regards to the submission, except for when I entered the room of the BTC. So I'm not too sure how I would have convinced him to have that meeting. Secondly, the instruction of BTC sitting, we receive it as procurement officials. We cannot indicate when it must be. We are simply told, your submission is going to be heard on this date and this time. My affidavit indicates that, unfortunately, I am not sure if whether it was Mr. Babelani or Ms. Susan Daniels who then informed me as to when the BTC sitting is. They are the two people who would inform a procurement official as to when a sitting is at. So that's to answer his first sweeping, unbiased, very biased statements that he has made about me. The second element where he's talking about working with Ms. Daniels, he is correct that I sought her assistance with this transaction. My affidavit indicates that because I was not sure in terms of prepayment and how to handle it, I requested my seniors to assist me in putting together the submission. So I worked with her. I did not collude with her. I worked with her so that she can assist me. Similarly, I worked with Mr. Mabelani. Similarly, I worked with Mr. Koko and Mr. Mboweni to get the submission together. So I take great offense to his statements. I further take offense to his statement that he says that I hid the submission. It is resolution 2 that talks to prepayment. I'm going to stop here because my father raised me right.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Dr. Nteta, if we may please go through this submission quickly. The submission is in Eskom Bundle 18. Eskom Bundle 18, bracket A, page 292.
Page 292.
Yes. Eskom Bundle 18.
Thank you. I'm getting to that page.
Yes.
Apologies for the delay. I'm at the submission.
Yes, the submission, the summary of facts, salient facts, paragraph 3, you see that, and 3.1.
Yes.
On the first page of the submission.
Yes.
Yes. Under salient facts, it reads, the requirement for the supply of contract coal originates from the April 2016 supply plan.
Mr. Selega, I suggest that with regard to the submission,
Yes.
you just go to the points that you seek to make about it without
Yes, Chair.
reading substantial parts of it. Obviously,
Yes.
you can read a particular part, but I just think that it's important to just go to the points that you seek to make about
Yes.
it.
So this is one of,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I accept the chairperson's guidance there. It says the requirement for the supply of contract coal originates from the April 2016 supply plan, as presented at the Primary Energy Technical Control Center of 8 April 2016. It was identified that supply to Arnold will be inadequate to meet the burn requirements of the power station over the winter months, and that there is an urgent need for additional coal. This identified requirement is as a result of the need to build up stock days over a short period, while the RFP, request for proposal for Arnold, is being finalized. This shortfall of supply amounts to approximately 2.1 million tons. And it goes on to talk about at present. The RFP is in the negotiation phase. Dr. Nteta, you were seeking to take the chairperson through this technical control center meeting. Could you tell the chairperson, in regard to this paragraph that I've read about the urgent need for coal in the winter months, whether this statement was supported by the supply plan of April 2016?
I'm going to take you through, yes, I was going to take you to that particular tactical control center meeting.
Yes.
And one of the elements I was going to take you through was the bullet point in terms of bullet point number 11, where I was requested in terms of myself and my team to come up with proposals and plan by close of business on Monday.
Yes.
Now, in that particular tactical procurement meeting,
But
I'm going to relate to...
Can I?
Sorry?
Yeah, can I? Because I'm asking a different question. My
Okay.
question is...
All right.
My question is whether...
I think I know what you're asking me.
Yes, okay. Let me repeat it for the benefit of the chairperson. The April 2016 supply plan, whether the statement made here that there would be a shortfall over the winter months, whether that statement was supported by the April 2016 supply plan.
I'm going to say no, because I think I know where you're going.
Okay. Chair, I'm moving
Would you
on.
like me
Well,
to elaborate?
well, you know that the fact that you say you are going to say no doesn't mean it's not your answer. So it is your answer. If you say, I'm going to say no, it doesn't
Yes.
change anything. Your answer is no. Is that correct? You understand that?
I wanted to elaborate, but I've opted to not to elaborate.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Continue, evidence leader.
Thank you.
As you lead my evidence.
Yeah, thank you. Then it says, I'm reading in the paragraph which reads, the current short-term portfolio consists of 2 suppliers, namely Umsimbiti Mining and Tegeta Exploration and Resources. You see that?
Yes.
But I understand it to be your evidence that there were more than, well, many suppliers to Anod Power Station. Correct?
Yes.
So it was not only Umsimbiti and Tegeta.
Yes.
Correct.
There were other suppliers that were contracted already.
And
So
supplying
these
coal.
were the 2 that were... Pardon?
And supplying coal, contracted and supplying coal to Anod.
Yes, there were the others that we're looking at were contracted and supplying coal. Some of them hadn't even done box cuts.
Yeah. Now, can you recall how did Umsimbiti get to be incorporated into this submission?
Yes, I can.
Yes, please tell the chairperson.
Okay. So in the course of the day of the 11th of April, as I indicated, I've been consulting quite a bit with my seniors. And Mr. Mabelani then it got incorporated after a discussion that I had with Mr. Mabelani, where he asked me about Msimbiti Coal in terms of when their contract is coming to an end, and then indicated that I should put Msimbiti in the submission. I should get the volumes and etc.
So Umsimbiti had not approached you for an extension?
So they hadn't approached me. They hadn't approached me directly for an extension. They had discussions with them in terms of the coal operations team because they were concerned about the coal contracts look at period in terms of time period as well as volumes. So their time period was going to expire before they've completed their volumes. So
Yes,
they
but-
had indicated that to the coal operations team.
Yeah, but
And so they had approached Eskom.
okay, is that your answer now? That they had approached Eskom for an extension?
They'd spoken to the coal operations, yes. If that makes sense. So they hadn't approached myself. There had just been a concern that we're not gonna make our volumes because they had issues, but they hadn't approached me directly.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But when I say approach, I don't want to make it similar to the Tegeta approach, because that was direct, here's the coal. It was more in terms of, I'd rather say it's they were engaging with the coal, with the contracts manager.
Yes, okay. Let me ask my question differently.
In terms of the managing of their contract.
Yes, let me ask my question differently. Because you are saying it was Mr. Edwin Mabelane who asked you to incorporate Umsimbiti in the submission.
Yes.
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 My question was, do you know, you personally, that Umsimbiti had asked for an extension of the contract?
So when Mr. Mabelane spoke to me at the time, I didn't know whether they had specifically asked when he asked me at the time. But in my going back, because one of the things that he'd asked me to do is to get the volumes that they were currently supplying, in just more detail about their contract. So in my engagement, where I would get that information would be from the coal operations person who's managing that particular contract. Have I answered your question?
No, you haven't. But I want to move on, but you haven't answered the question. Is it a yes or no? It's a yes or no. Did you know personally that they asked for an extension?
At the time, no. No.
Yeah, I want to go to the next page of the submission.
Yeah.
Page 293. Page 293, under the sentence, the benefits for extending these short-term contracts include. And you will recall that I said this was exactly one of the reasons given in the submission, that it was an extension of the existing contract. So you see that the benefits for extending these short-term contracts include.
Yes.
Include bullet 1, the coal is being mined and can be delivered without delay. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Was this correct?
So, yes, it was correct in the sense that the coal was being mined. I have reflected in terms of that particular statement and reflecting in terms of what is understood versus what I understood.
Okay.
So in saying that, the coal was being mined because I was trying to put it in relation to that they are operational mines. And perhaps in hindsight, I should have said, these are operational mines. Because we always looked at in terms of just the contrast of an operational mine and not an operational mine. So it just means that if it's an operational mine, we can then get the coal sooner than not. But in hindsight, having looked in terms of what the statement says and what a person outside of coal operations would understand it, it means something different.
Yes, okay. I was struggling to follow your answer there. The question is, it's stated here as one of the benefits. It says the coal is being mined and can be delivered without delay. And my question was that factually correct?
Well, she said the coal is being mined part is correct, but I think you said, Dr. Nteta, that the part that says the coal is being mined is correct, but you seem to concede that the second part, that the coal can be delivered without delay, you seem to concede that it was not correct. Is my understanding correct?
Yes. In terms of that, yeah, there would be a delay.
Yes.
It would not be available the next day. Yeah. So it would not be available the next day.
Yes. Now,
Would it be available in a month's time?
Yes, it would be available in a month's time.
Okay, in 2 weeks' time? Would it have been available in 2 weeks' time?
Yes, it probably will be available in 2 weeks' time, yes.
Okay, Mr. Selega?
thank you, Chair. Now, if to the extent that you say that, okay, let me deal with the first part. You're saying the first part is correct, that coal is being mined. Now, let me read to you that paragraph regarding the prepayment, which is just above paragraph 3.2. Key assumptions is above that, Chairperson. It says both suppliers have indicated a willingness to extend current contracts. However, Tegeta has requested that Eskom consider some form of prepayment to enable it to meet the production requirements from the export component of the mine, in lieu of the fact that it subsidizes the direct feed of Andrina Power, and this will enable it to meet the coal supply demands for the 2 power stations in the short term. Now, the prepayment is required, as we read here, in order for Tegeta to you have said to reopen its export component of the mine. How do we reconcile that statement with what you say is a correct portion of that sentence? The coal is being mined.
So to reconcile the two, on the reason why I said the coal is being mined, I was speaking to in terms of the site of the operations. So the site in terms of where Tegeta was getting the coal was being mined. The site where Msimbiti was getting the coal was being mined. They were having difficulty in the sense that they were not able to get to their 100% operation, and we were getting trickles of coal from them. So that's why I'm saying to you that the statement that I made was in terms of the coal is being mined, it is correct. The element in terms of the delay, because the delay would then be because they would need to now start their production operations in terms of the beneficiation part of that particular coal that is being mined so that it meets our particular spec. So that is how I reconcile the two.
Yes, but we have to understand this in the way in which it was presented to the BTC. And the chairperson of BTC says,
Yes.
the chairperson of BTC says, we were being told, unless we approve this deal, there will be load shedding. Coal is required immediately. It's an urgent situation. But the prepayment request is made in order to explore or reopen the export component of the mine that had been closed by OCM.
Yes.
So mining there is not taking place.
Mining was taking place at OCM. In terms of the mine operations, mining was taking place. When they're opening the export operations, and my understanding was that it's opening up the export operations so that they can begin to beneficiate that coal so that it then meets the grade that we are looking at. So that part needed still to be opened. I'm not sure if I'm coming clear. So that was my understanding of that one statement in the submission.
Yeah, well, I think you can sense it's not particularly clear or coming out particularly clear Did Umsimbiti require a prepayment?
Yes. Pardon?
Did Umsimbiti require a prepayment?
Msimbiti did not require a prepayment.
And Umsimbiti could not deliver immediately.
Msimbiti's issues were different in terms of their ability to deliver immediately. They
Yes.
were not able to, when I talk about the delay, is because they were having an industrial strike, which was limiting their capacity to deliver the full volumes that they were due to deliver to us.
Yes. Yeah, just give a direct,
So they did not require prepayment.
yes, but give a direct answer. Could they deliver immediately?
Yes, they could deliver immediately, not the required volumes.
Okay, let's go. Now tell the chairperson how do we reconcile the two? If you go to the first page of the submission.
Sorry, can I ask you to start? Can I ask you to start your sentence again because I lost you? Thank you.
Okay, your answer is that they could deliver immediately but not the required volumes. Umsimbiti. Is that your answer to my question?
Evidence leader, can I respond? I've noted that you're taking me through line by line of the submission. And I want to also note to you that the submission was prepared based on a lot of inputs. If looking at line by line, it may not, in hindsight, we can take it apart and say it is not clear. And that I will concede to. My understanding of the submission and that line that we are looking at in the submission is talking to whether the coal can get there immediately or not immediately. And I concede that that particular line in that submission is not clear. So Msimbiti at this time was supplying coal, but very limited amounts and quite erratically. So it's correct that it was not, I shouldn't have said without delay, because it would depend on when the strike is over. So they were supplying, but not the required amounts. And yes, that one line is my understanding, and someone else's is very different, and I concede to that.
Well, I'm not sure whether it's a question of it's unclear or not so clear. What I'm testing with you, it's a question of whether a statement made is factually correct. That's really what I'm testing with you. When you say coal was being mined and it will be delivered immediately, that's to me so clear. I understand it to say what it means is clear to me. But what I'm saying to you is, was that factually correct? That's a different question.
The statement, I'm saying, in my opinion, I felt it was correct, where it was saying without delay. Now, the issue is what is the delay? So I believe that it was correct. But the question now we are asking in hindsight is that, where was it? Tomorrow is available, and I'm saying to you, tomorrow, the next day, the coal was not going to be available. But in a few weeks, it would be available.
But then the BTC would have been misled.
And I'm conceding.
Yes.
I don't think the BTC would have been misled in the statement. The second thing is that what I want to indicate, sorry.
Let me finalize why my statement. But before I finalize it, you were about to say to the chairperson you are conceding. Just quickly on that, finalize it.
What I'm conceding to is it. So what I was saying, I'm conceding to in terms of the delivery without delay, in the sense that I'm conceding that, yes, it was not going to be available the next day, the coal.
Yes.
That is what I am conceding to. And I'm also conceding to that the statement there may not be clear, which is very easy for us to look at in hindsight. It's one line in the submission.
Yes. Now, there were two aspects then, because if you concede that the coal was not going to be immediately available or available without delay, if you concede that's not correct, then I'm saying to you, when one reads the affidavit of Mr. Koza, who says, we were being told urgently make this decision, otherwise there will be load shedding, then the BTC was misled by that statement that coal will be made available without delay.
Advocate Sileka,
Yes.
the BTC submission is a 4-page document.
Yes.
If Mr. Koza is saying that because of one sentence in a 4-page document, the BTC in totality was misled, then I find that very difficult to say so, to agree to. Because in providing that particular document, there are other statements that are in there that are correct. And if there was a bit of an issue in terms of, like you are asking me now, in terms of, can you unpack this statement? They are entitled, and they do in the deliberation, to ask us in terms of what does this statement mean, and then we can provide clarity. So I have difficulty in saying that the BTC was misled because of one line in a 4-page document,
Okay, the second point.
as Mr. Koza is implying.
Yes. The second
Well,
point.
just 1 second. I can understand your point, Dr. Nteta, when you say if the BTC wanted to make inquiries with you as to what is meant by a particular line, like without delay, you were available, because I think that's the point you make. Is that correct? That's one of the points you make. Is that correct?
Yes, because the document sits and yes, it's correct.
Yes. That point I can understand if that's factually correct, even though they would obviously ask if they were not sure what it means, a particular sentence. But if they believed that it was clear, obviously they would not bother to ask, and they would act on their understanding of what it means. If they understood without delay to mean the moment the contract is signed or the prepayment is made, the following day coal can be delivered, that would be an understanding that is justified, I would imagine, by the statement that says without delay. But it may well be that within the context that was known to you or to Eskom or to the Board BTC, it may well be that without delay couldn't or shouldn't have been understood to be like the following day, but maybe it should be understood to be certainly within a week or more than that, I'm not sure. That I can understand. But with regard to the point you make that in effect you don't understand why they would be misled by one sentence in a 4-page document, I'm not sure that I understand that. One sentence in a 4-page document can be very important and can relate to a very material point, and it can be misleading. But if you say to me, if they read that sentence in the context of the whole document, then they would not be justified in giving it a certain meaning, then I can understand. But then you should be able to say, but when you go to page 4, you can see that what was said in page 4 in effect qualifies what was said in that statement 2 pages earlier, because if you read what is said at page 4, it couldn't, the sentence could not be understood to mean delivery of coal the following day. Then I would understand. You understand where my concern is?
Yes, Chairperson.
You want to say something?
And I'm in agreement with you. Yes, Chairperson, I'm in agreement with you. And in fact, prior to you beginning to provide this context, which I appreciate, I was also going to say that when you look in the context of the document, the full document, there's a statement that is made as well that says on the page before, talks about Msimbiti, there's a industrial action, and should read it to you, it says the current contract supply will then be depleted around June 2016, should the industrial action be stemmed and full mining operations resumes. So when you look at it in terms of the full context of the document, for me, I would then understand that they would ask as to, but Ayanda, you've made a statement in this document here that says without delay, but you're telling me about an industrial strike. So, you know, what is the, how long and what is the delay? Or Ayanda, you're saying to me that it's without delay, but within Tegeta, they need to start up their operations. So what do you mean? So for me, all I'm saying is that they had the opportunity to ask these questions, and these are very relevant questions, but looking in terms of the full context of the document.
Mr. Selega?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
I might just say that I'm keen that we move on,
Yes.
because we have been on this submission for a very long time.
Okay,
But
Chair.
obviously important points must be covered, but I think
Yes.
we need to move on, otherwise we spend the whole time today on this submission.
The submission, Chair, is really the last part of Dr. Nteta's evidence. So once we have finished the submission, we will be reaching the end of her evidence.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Nteta, indeed, the paragraph you're referring to, which is on page 1 of that submission document, at the bottom of the page, Chairperson, that's Eskom Bundle 18, page 292, reads that Msimbiti is contracted to supply Arnold with 540,000 tons and is currently underperforming due to protracted industrial action. The current contract supply will then be depleted in and around June 2016, should the industrial action be stemmed and full mining operations resume. The supplier indicated a willingness to extend from July 2016 until September 2016 on similar terms and conditions. So, you see, because I'm looking at this with I'm looking at it, but really putting to you the version of the chairperson of BTC. Insofar as he says the impression they were brought under by the explanation is that unless you agree, there will be load shedding. But I think you've traversed that. I can move on, unless if you want to comment on it before I move on.
I've got no comment in terms of that. I think he must answer what does he mean by the impression that he got, and from whom did he get the impression. I have too many questions with that statement to provide a comment.
Okay. Thank you. Now, we know that well, please tell the chairperson, when you started drafting the submission, you had not received a written offer from Mr. Nath. I want you to
Correct.
Yes. I want you, please, to tell the chairperson whether you ever receive a written offer, when do you receive it, and what were the terms of the written offer?
So I received the written offer from Mr. Nath on the 11th of April 2016. The reason why I received the written offer is because I contacted Mr. Nath. I contacted Mr. Nath either on that Monday or on the Friday. I cannot recall which of those two, but for me that's immaterial as to the particular day. But what I contacted Mr. Nath and I indicated to him that I need a written offer for the supply of coal because I'd noted that we'd been discussing this coal transaction since March, but there was not a written offer. So I then asked him to please put the full written offer and send it to me, and which is really just like sort of a culmination of what we'd been discussing. And that I received on the Monday. I say I received it on the Monday based on the investigators indicating when I received it.
Well, Chairperson, if I may assist you, Dr. Nteta, Chairperson, Eskom Bundle 14, page 226. It's a Bundle 14, 14 bracket A, page 226. It's an email from Ravindra Nath, Monday, 11 April 2016 at 16:28. Sent to you, Dr. Nteta, a draft, attachment document 1. Hello, madam. FYI, regards, Arnath. Now, this is in the...
Did you say bundle 14A, page 269?
Page 226. 226.
I think I'm at 269.226.
Yeah.
So let me get there first.
14A, 226. Yeah. It's an email from Ravindra Nath on Monday, 11 April 2016 at 16:28 to Dr. Nteta. The subject is draft. The attachment is document 1. The email reads, hello, madam. FYI, regards, Arnath. You see that, Dr. Nteta?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So by this time, this is on Monday, by this time, you had engaged with your fellow colleagues that you have mentioned, Suzanne Daniels, Edwin Mabelane, Mr. Koko, to put together a submission prior to you receiving a written offer from Mr. Nath.
Correct.
So you have requested the written offer and you receive one, but why did you not request it at the very first approach made to you by Mr. Nath?
Quite frankly, I forgot. And generally what happens is that when suppliers come to us and discuss coal, we initially have a discussion to see the feasibility, etc. And then when we do believe it's a little bit more feasible, then we will then start putting documentation together. So when he first spoke to me about it, I did not ask him at that time for the offer letter.
Isn't it
oversight from my side?
Yes. Fine. Well, isn't it astounding that you set about to prepare a 4-page submission, putting together the terms of a submission to BTC without having a written offer from the proposed supplier?
It is not unusual. I'll be frank with you, it's not unusual, but it's not best practice. So when I said to you, I'm not sure if I spoke to him on the Friday or the Monday, asking for the offer, the written offer. It could have been that it was on Friday and you only sent it to me on Monday. But as I indicated, asking for it at the very beginning was an oversight from myself. We do put submissions together based on different offers, discussions that we may have had with suppliers. Oftentimes, we would do that, but it was an oversight.
Well, then the offer is on page 227.
Well, before you go to 27, I think when you gave evidence last time, Dr. Nteta, I raised this same question also, and it continues to come back, because it just seems to me that if somebody approaches you as Eskom or any entity and says, I would like you to offer you coal, before you, if you are not the decision maker or this, you take it to the relevant decision maker in writing, that you would say, please give me your offer. Give me your offer in writing. Let me see exactly what the terms and conditions are that you are looking at, before you even begin to prepare something. One of the reasons why you do that, you don't want to misrepresent anything about the terms and conditions from them, But two, you want to consider this offer yourself, because you probably need to make a recommendation to somebody, or the person who has the power to make the decision, or the structure. And it does look awkward where you get to the trouble of preparing a 4-page submission without a written offer, or at least a document from the supplier or potential supplier, which just sets out the essential terms, to say to us, these are the important terms. If you have difficulty with any of these, then we can talk, but these are the important ones. But I guess there is not much you can add. You answered it last time, and you have just answered it now. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Selega?
Thank you, Chair. Then the offer on page 227, Dr. Nteta, it's quite, well, I should say something about the time, which is 1628. And this is the time after Mr. Hauer, 3 o'clock runabout, has now been told by Mr. Marsden that the consortium of banks have declined the offer to either defer the payment of 600 million rand or to offer them a bridging loan. Then you see this offer being made, 1628. Did you in fact request this offer to be made in writing?
Yes, I did ask him to make the offer in writing, because it is one of our requirements that we must have the offer in writing.
So it's in fact one of your requirements at Eskom?
Yeah, so so what I was saying to you, that when I considered, I said it's not best practice. So what we generally do, and it's not best practice, that we will engage with suppliers in coal. We'll actually get into details in terms of their costings and their costing modules before we even get an offer on the table, because we want to interrogate in terms of the supply, in terms of the coal that is being considered.
Yes.
So we do that. It is not best practice. But one of the things we must put in terms of on our file is that you put what was the offer that came in at, and if there are changes in terms of subsequent negotiations, we also provide that as well.
Yes. But if it is a requirement, as you say it is, a written offer, then it's no longer a matter of whether it's bad practice or not, good or bad practice. It's a matter of a requirement by your employer.
So it is in terms of, yes, because we talk about an unsolicited offer. You must receive an unsolicited offer.
Yes.
So it is a requirement that we
Yes.
receive an offer.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying it's a requirement that we get an offer.
Yes, but we are talking written
So,
offer.
yes. To be frank with you, I don't have that particular section of the document with me, whether it's written or it's not written. But what I'm saying to you that it is best practice, that it is something that you have in writing. But I cannot offhand, off the cuff, tell you whether it should be written or not.
Okay.
But I know that for me, I want a written offer. I just think it's best practice.
Yes. Just the timing is remarkable. The timing of this email coming now with a written offer. Here's the offer on page 227. And the offer has a couple of points to it. It says, kindly refer to the discussion we had in this regard. So this is Mr. Nath writing to you. You and him had discussions prior to him sending this offer. Correct?
Correct.
In this
Yes.
connection,
So as I indicated to you, sorry?
yes. In this connection, Tegeta Exploration and Resources offers Eskom to supply additional 1.2 million tons of coal from Optimum Coal Mine, Pty Ltd, over a period of 5 months. Yeah. So we've traversed that issue about why couldn't you buy directly from OCM and buying from Tegeta. And the chairperson also added the fact that, in fact, at this time in April, Tegeta did not have a contract to supply such amount of coal to you. It did not have a contract with OCM to supply that amount of coal to Eskom. I don't know whether you knew or didn't know about that.
Whether I knew or didn't know that they didn't have a contract at the time.
With OCM to supply 1.2 million
Supply.
tons of coal.
So at that particular time, I don't know. I don't think I knew.
You don't think you knew?
I don't think. I can't recall, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to remember.
It carries on. For increasing the production of the mine and beneficiation thereof, we need funds for smooth execution of this contract. But can you see the reason is different from your reason to the BTC of an urgency? They
So
want
my
funds.
reason for the urgency for the BTC sitting,
Tegeta says they want funds. And they say what the reason is, increasing the production of the mine and beneficiation thereof.
yes.
Did you tell the BTC this is why Tegeta wants the funds?
Yes. So if you look in terms of what I said to the BTC, I indicated to them it's for their operations. And let me just try and get to the submission. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the...
Well, I think if I recall correctly, you said that they wanted to revive their export operations.
Yes.
That does not on the face of it, seem to be what they are saying here. But you may take a different view. I think in your submission to the BTC, you said they needed the money in order to revive their export operations, and I think that was your evidence. But I don't read what they say here to be saying the same thing, but you might give a different understanding.
So I had a conversation with Mr. Na with regards to when I asked him, when he indicated that they would like a prepayment, he indicated that it's for the operations of the mines, in the export portion of it. I had that conversation. Now in the letter, it says for increasing the production of the mine and beneficiation thereof.
Yes.
Now, increasing production of the mine and beneficiation is part of mine operations. Because so I'm not sure that I understand the contrast that you are highlighting. If you can just make that clear to me.
Well, one might not understand how the mine was, but there seems to have been two sections in terms of the operations, at least. One for the export and one for the domestic. That's the impression that one gets. And they had the export section had challenges to the extent that it needed to be revived. But Eskom wasn't going to get coal from the export section, I would imagine. It was going to get coal from the domestic section, I would imagine. That's the impression I have, but you might say, no, it's not correct understanding. This is the position. On the face of it, it looks like they wanted money from Eskom to do something that was just going to give them more profit, to boost a different section that had nothing to do with Eskom.
So, I'm really, maybe it's just perspective. So the mine has an export, the mine is a mine, and this is my understanding, The mine has a mine, it's mining coal. The first coal that goes, it then goes to Hendrina, and it's of a certain quality of coal. I'm going to say it's a 22. Now their export portion, that coal, what can happen is that to get it into a higher CV coal, it goes into beneficiation so that it can then improve its calorific value and things like that. And then they would then export that coal. And that coal is generally of a better quality than the Hendrina one. So when they are saying in their statement that it's for increasing the production of the mine, is to increase the production of the mine so that they have additional, coal, which they would then beneficiate. So they've used the word in this, the word production in their letter. I've used the word operations. But my understanding it is the same aspect of it. But maybe we're not hearing each other because I'm not understanding.
Yes, Mr. Selega wants to pursue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Nteta, the submission.
Thank you.
The submission reads, Tegeta, However, Tegeta has requested that Eskom consider some form of prepayment. That's you writing before Tegeta has put this thing, the offer in writing. You are saying Tegeta has requested Eskom to consider some form of prepayment to enable it to meet the production requirements from the export component of the mine.
Yes.
You wrote that in the submission.
So what I was saying to you is that we had discussions. I had discussions with Mr. Nap. So, for example, when he first came to me and said to me that we require a prepayment, I did ask him the question as to why do you require this prepayment? And then he gave me the explanation as to know it's for the production, et cetera, for the mine. I also indicated to him, okay, said, okay, and he continued, and I said to him, anyway, at the end of the conversation, I did say to him, I was just asking, but that is, when you talk about payment terms and reasons, et cetera, that is within the domain of finance. So he had indicated to me why they needed it. You are correct. I received the written offer on the Monday, but I had spoken to him before, because when he first says to me, I need a prepayment, my reaction was why, and that's the reason that he gave me. We've spoken about whether I should have received the offer letter before doing the submission, and I've considered I should have got it before. I did not. But I did understand why they wanted it from Mr. Nam.
Yes, but your submission doesn't say anything about beneficiation of the coal that is mined.
Sorry? My submission does not say?
Your submission to the BTC doesn't say anything about beneficiation of the coal that would be supplied.
Okay, so I did not put the word beneficiation in the submission.
No, it's not just a word. It's not just a word. That's their reason why they want a prepayment.
Okay. I'm trying to get to the submission so that we can read it exactly what it says.
The submission is Eskom Bundle 18 on page 239.
2239.
I beg your pardon, 293.
Yes.
293.
Yes.
Yes. That paragraph which says, but suppliers have indicated a willingness to extend the current contract. However, Tegeta has requested that Eskom consider some form of prepayment to enable it to meet the production requirements from the export component of the mine. Then it carries on, in lieu of the fact that it subsidizes the direct feed to Hendrina Power, and this will enable it to meet the coal supply demands for the two power stations in the short term. And the two power stations refer to, is it Hendrina and Kriel? I'm not sure. You can tell that Arnott and Kriel power station. I beg your pardon.
Yes. And you're contrasting that statement to?
To their own written offer to you.
Yes. That talks about production and beneficiation?
Yes.
Yes.
So the
Well, I wonder whether when they say they needed the funds for increasing the production of the mine, well, if they wanted to revive the export section, and if the domestic section and the export section are on the same mine, it may well be that one could talk about increasing the production of the mine. It's just that it's the export section that they are talking about, but they may have refrained in their written offer from making that clear. Maybe because it might have weakened their case for a prepayment, I'm not sure, but they may have refrained. But when they were speaking to Dr. Nteta, it was before they decided, no, let's just say production of the mine without talking about the export section and the internal or domestic section. But if one looked at it that way, would one not be able to say they just refrained from being clearer than they could have been? They just put a general phrase and said, well, nobody will say we are lying if we say we want to increase the production of the mine. Of course we want to increase the production of the mine because we want to revive the export section.
Yes, Chair.
I'm just taking that, as a step to say maybe that is, to that extent, maybe that's not untrue, but once one has Dr. Nteta's evidence about what they told her, then one may well say, well, in effect, it might not have been increasing the production of the internal or domestic section of the mine. It was for maybe reviving the production of the export section of the mine. And then the beneficiation maybe applies either way. But towards the end of that sentence, they say, we need funds for smooth execution of this contract. And this contract was about the domestic section and not the export section. And I wonder whether that is not where the statement might be clearly misleading, if what they told Dr. Nteta was true, namely that they actually wanted to revive the export operations.
And
do you want to say something?
That's the problem we have. That's as the legal team. Because Dr. Nteta, if, Chair, as you say, maybe they thought mentioning explicitly reopening the export section of the mine would weaken their offer or their request for prepayment, then, Chair, it shouldn't have found its way into the submission. Because that seems to be a point explicitly made in the submission by the Eskom officials, that this is what Tegeta intends to do. And we're trying to see, is that what Tegeta told you? Because the impression created, Dr. Nteta, is that you within Eskom were helping Tegeta to come up with a reason that would justify a decision for a prepayment. That's the impression created. Are you able to comment on that?
I think you must indicate you must indicate to enable her to comment properly. You need to say what it is that gives rise to that impression.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So what we were going through now, the exercise, is that we see that there's one reason in your submission, that the prepayment is sought for the purposes of Tegeta, and I paraphrase, reopening its export section of the mine. That reason is in the submission during the drafting process, before Tegeta makes you a written offer. The written offer comes late afternoon of 11 April 2016. And the written offer seems to have a different reason given for why Tegeta itself wants a prepayment. So my submission, what I was putting to you is this, that if one looks at the actions taken by Eskom executives Friday night, over the weekend, drafting that 4-page document without even having a written offer from Tegeta, coming up with reasons why Tegeta wants a prepayment, it would seem that you within Eskom, in drafting that submission, you were seeking to assist Tegeta to come up with reasons that would justify the BTC making a prepayment decision. I hope.
Well,
Not quite clear.
well, I want to say something because I want us to finish with evidence, if this was where evidence was supposed to finish. Namely, if you contrast the two, namely the reason that she gave in her submission to the BTC as to why Tegeta needed the prepayment, you contrast it with the reason given by Tegeta in their written offer. The reason that she gave was unlikely to strengthen the case for justification. Maybe this one, if she had put this one, that might have been, one might have said, well, maybe she was trying to not reveal the true reason. That's my thinking.
Yes.
But let her answer, and she might say no. Actually, this is the position. Dr. Nteta?
So, thank you, Chairperson. I must say that I'm feeling a little bit confused. But what I'm going to tell you is what happened. The supplier indicated to me as to why, and they indicated this to me verbally, as to why they want the prepayment. Mm-hmm. I then took that reason and put it within the document and wrote it in the document. Mm-hmm. Correctly so, I should have waited for them to put it in writing and put it verbatim, what they've said in the document. I did not do that. I put in the document what I understood their reason for the prepayment. I did not delve into the detail of that because I believed that when you discuss payment and payment terms, it is something that I would then expect the people who make the decision as to whether or not to make a prepayment, they would then look into the justification for that. So that is what I did. In understanding the difference between the two and which is stronger or not, I don't know, but what I do know is what I put into the document based on what the supplier had said and what I understood it to be.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Thank you. So,
did you plan another witness after her?
yes, Chair.
Who is that?
It's Ms. Venita Klein.
Oh.
The technology was interrupting us.
Yeah, I think.
May I make a comment?
Yes. Yes.
Deputy DCJ,
Yes.
I'm not coming back. I refuse to come back. So I'd rather you stay and you finish. It's been a very exhausting experience. I've been with the investigators. And your evidence leader for very long.
No.
So, whilst you deliberate, please remember that.
No. It's not about you. It's more about the next witness. I think if her evidence was really about the submission, I think we must wrap up. But you are the evidence leader.
Yes.
I don't know if there's something else important that you still wanted to, but we have been on the submission since she started.
Yeah, the entire evidence turns on it. There are certain things in regard to the offer that we might need to touch upon quickly. And
yeah, what will they lead to? What's the point they will assist in making?
yes, well, Chairperson Dr. Nteta, you listening as well?
Okay. Well, you can tell me if you would like me to wait until you ask those questions.
No, I've consulted with Dr. Nteta. She knows exactly. Dr. Nteta there are certain things about the prepayment, the discount that was given by Tegeta. You will have to tell the chairperson about that and how that issue was dealt with. Because you see in the evidence, the BTC was told the CFO, Mr. Anod Singh, will negotiate the discount.
Yeah, well, can you wrap that up in 10 minutes? Or is
No, that should
is
take
too
shorter
late?
than that.
Yeah,
If-
okay.
Dr. Nteta, I'm sure you can take shorter than that, isn't it?
Well, I think
If it means I leave sooner, I will.
yeah, she doesn't give long answers, so I think just ask her the question.
Yes, just tell the chairperson, Dr. Nteta. Tegeta here made an offer of a 3.5% discount. And you know that that offer in your response was taken off. You go to page 229. So you took off that offer, and the BTC was told that no, Mr. Anod Singh is going to negotiate the offer of 3.5 discount. A discount of 3.5. But the point was, Tegeta had in fact already made that offer to you. So can you please explain to the chairperson, you understand the proposition I'm putting to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So with regards to the payment and the discount,
Yes.
when I engaged with the supplier, as I indicated to you, that I was coming to them from a sourcing and a acquisition of assets position in terms of looking for coal. Now, when you talk to the segregation of duty within Eskom and in fact best practice, the person who deals with acquiring the assets should not be the same person who deals with payment. And that needs to fall somewhere else. Within Eskom, that falls within the finance side. So when I spoke to Mr. Na, and also when you talk about our offer letters, the offer letter talks to how much are they offering for coal. I opted, because I thought it was the best thing, to de-link the payment to the offer, because my understanding was that the BTC was going to deliberate in terms of whether they even think that a prepayment is required, is necessary, should be done. If the BTC had come back and said, we are not willing to have then remained maybe at the amount. So I then felt that we need to de-link, and I also told Mr. Nathat that the payment issue will be discussed negotiated with finance, because I did not want to get into that element. So when we got into the BTC, they deliberated in terms of that, and then the BTC decided that one, the prepayment is something that they would consider, and two, that they believe that the head of finance, which is the CFO, should negotiate that. Whether it was going to be 3.5, 5%, 10%, 1%, he had the tools to be able to ascertain as to what makes sense for Eskom, and also if Eskom can financially afford that decision. So the payment aspect of it, I did not engage it. And that's how it got. My suggestion to the supplier that he removes it, because I was talking to only the coal, but you will note that it remained in the letter. But it was within the domain of finance.
Yeah, well, that response doesn't necessarily answer the proposition, but it has an aspect in it of what I'm trying you to show the chairperson. Because the evidence at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, and which is what we see here again, is that the BTC was told that Mr. Singh will negotiate a discount. And I think it was expressly stated that it will be 3.5% to the BTC. What the BTC was not told is that, in fact, Tegeta had already offered a discount. So there was no negotiation to be made because the offer had already been made up front. That's the one thing. And I wanted you to explain that to the chairperson. That's one. Number two is that this payment, the prepayment, was made on the 13th of April, 2016. There is no indication, and in fact, Mr. Anod Singh was asked about this at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. There is no indication that he, in fact, negotiated any discount. And he was asked, who did you negotiate with? And he couldn't remember. So those are the aspects I had thought you would tell the chairperson about, because the BTC was not told that Tegeta had made an offer. Correct?
Okay. So the BTC was I beg to differ in terms of whether the BTC was told it was 3.5%, as I don't think so. However, I'm going to provide you with my perspective. The figure of 3.5% is something that at the point that we're at BTC, we would not know whether it is the right number or not. So when I then talk about the offer, and I'm going to say it again, I'm looking at it as saying that the supplier has said to us that it's going to be this amount, the figure. Maybe I shouldn't say the number, the figure, whatever it is. And that is what it is. So if there is no prepayment, because I would not know whether the BTC is going to say yes to a prepayment or no to a prepayment. So that's why it is not indicated there. The BTC deliberated in terms of who must do this negotiation. I'm not sure if they actually spoke to a percentage discount, because I'm assuming that the finance people will do what they need to do. So that's to answer the first one. The second one was where you said to me the payment was made within 2 days. I'm not going to go into comment in terms of the payment aspect, because I will take us back to the segregation of duty. And it was the responsibility of the CFO to negotiate a acceptable discount, and whether he did or he didn't, I'm not going to go into that one. But for me, I was really focusing on the acquisition of the coal.
Yes, but
Was the written offer of Tegeta placed before the BTC on the 11th?
It was, Chair, it was not.
Yes. How come?
The written offer came in at about 4:30. If my memory serves me correctly, I was working on the submission, and I only really engaged that particular written offer as it is the next day. So it was not put to the BTC at the time.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. And yeah, I hear you saying that you don't want to go through to the issue of payment, but did you not play any role in ensuring that payment is executed? Did your role here end on that night of 11 April 2016, or did it carry on?
Yes. So the only role that I played, so yes, my role ended the night of the BTC submission. The role that I played the next day was Mr. Nath sent me a pro forma invoice. The evidence will tell what time he did so, and for payment. And what I did is what I forwarded it to the people who were delegated in terms of sorry, not the delegated, I forwarded it to Mr. Mabelani and I think it's Suzanne, and I'm just recalling from the evidence. What I do know for sure, and I recall, is that I contacted the head of finance and asked him whether he was aware of this prepayment. He said no, and I suggested that he speak to the CFO, and then I also forwarded him the document. And that was where it ended. Because yes, as I go back again and talk about a segregation of duty.
Chairperson, the email that forwarded the pro forma invoice is on Eskom Bundle 14, page 236. Page 236. That's again an email from Ravindra Nath, Tuesday, 12th April 2016. The next day after the night of the decision to make a prepayment. It's at 14:07. It's addressed to you, Dr. Nteta. The Eskom pro forma invoice, it says. Forward Eskom pro forma invoice. Eskom pro forma invoice is the attachment. Hello, madam. Please find attached pro forma invoice for prepayment. And the invoice is on page 237, exactly 659, just above 659 million rand. Right. Dr. Nteta, you have said you don't get involved in the payment, but here you're calling the finance person to find out whether they've received this invoice.
Correct.
You're going to tell the chairperson that was also not unusual?
No, so when I received the invoice from the supplier, I thought it was unusual. Unusual for a few reasons.
Okay.
One, the BTC had deliberated the night before. So it was unusual because now, as we're saying, it's 2 o'clock and now they're sending a pro forma invoice. So it's unusual. Secondly, I don't receive invoices. So once we've negotiated the coal supply agreements, the invoices, etc., are sent to finance, etc. So I don't receive it. So that was also unusual to me. So in calling the finance person and alerting him that I've received this invoice, one, have they negotiated this prepayment? What is the situation? And he then said to me he knew nothing of it. So yes, it's unusual for me to receive invoice, and I don't get involved in the payment aspects. And I should not get involved in the payment.
Yes, page 238, Eskom Bundle 14.
That's taken more than 10 minutes, Mr. Selega. I thought you were going to wrap up within 10 minutes.
Well, let me wrap up with this. Page 238. On page 238, are those two emails. One, to you with the pro forma invoice, and you forward that email to Mr. Edwin Mabelani and Ms. Suzanne Daniels at 14:26. You received it at 14:07. You forwarded to them at 14:26. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Here with pro forma invoice, please note it includes VAT. So why didn't you leave it to them to process the payment, phone whoever they needs to phone. Why did you personally phone the finance person?
Why did I phone the finance person?
No. After you sent the email to Mr. Edwin Mabelane and Ms. Suzanne Daniels, why didn't you leave the
Yes.
matter there? Why did you have to phone the finance person?
So the question is, once I've forwarded that invoice, pro forma invoice to Mr. Mabelane and Ms. Daniels, why did I pick up the phone and phone the finance department?
Yeah, why
Is that
didn't,
the question?
yes, why didn't you leave the matter up to them? Mr.
Yes,
Mabel-
but Mr. Selega, what point will this really make? If you send send something to a document to somebody, you can pick up the phone and say, "Did you receive it?" Isn't it?
She's not sending it to the finance person here.
Who is that?
She's sending it to Mr. Edwin Mabelane and Ms. Suzanne Daniels.
Yes,
Yes.
and what is she sending?
The pro forma invoice.
Yes, but where will that take us? If it's Mr. Mabelane or somebody in the finance department, what point will it be?
Let me say this, Chair.
Yes.
If I receive this email and I send it to the chairperson, who is not in finance, but the chairperson is my superior, I then should stop there. And that's what I'm asking Dr. Nteta. Why then did you take another step of phoning a finance person when my superior could have done that
Yes.
process?
What point does it advance in terms of what we are trying to establish on this prepayment?
Is the very impression, Chair, of the efforts made within Eskom by Eskom's own officials to assist in this process, to take the extraordinary means to assist in this process. So we're trying to correct that impression. Maybe Dr. Nteta will explain why she took that step.
I mean, after we have spent as much time as we have spent on this submission, I don't think that I want to spend more time on those minor points. I think it's a minor point. I really would like us to finalize.
Yeah, no, that comes to the end of it, Chair.
Yes.
Because,
Yes, you'd like
My
me to answer
reporter.
just that one at least. Okay, Dr. Nteta, just answer that one last question.
So the last question was that why did I, to quote unquote, take extraordinary steps? What I want to say, it is not extraordinary steps. I picked up a phone and called the finance business partner because what I had received was an invoice. So I don't think it's an extraordinary extra step. I felt I should inform them before I send them a pro forma invoice code.
yeah.
You are not satisfied.
She's not correcting the impression, but that's your evidence, Ms. Nteta, Dr. Nteta.
Yes.
That's your evidence. You see, Mr. Zitembe Koza is alleging collusion. He's alleging you interacting with the Guptas. And you are saying to the chairperson, although I sent this invoice to my superiors, I still went to the finance people and told them about this invoice.
You see, if you were referring to her making some communication to the Guptas that may have been unnecessary, then maybe the point would be clearer, unless there's something you don't tell me with regard to Mr. Mabelane, or that I'm missing. Wasn't Mr. Mabelane her superior?
He was.
He was.
Yeah.
So,
Those are the principals or
yes, so
the
she
seniors.
may have wanted to update him to say we have received an invoice, isn't
Oh,
it?
let me make it clear to the chairperson. Dr. Nteta, tell the chairperson, who is the finance person you phoned?
Mr. Snell Naga.
Yeah.
Naga.
Yes, Chair. So that's a different
He is the
person.
head of finance. He's the head of finance in Primary Energy Division. He's the gentleman who processes payments for coal transactions.
Yeah. So it's not Mr. Mabelani who is phoned. It's a different person.
Yeah.
There's no need to phone Mr. Mabelani because he was involved in the transaction. Snell was not. That's why I phoned him.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine, Chair. Yeah, because the payment gets to be made,
Yeah.
chairperson. And Chair, I don't know whether you would recall the evidence of Mr. Gert Opperman, who gets this invoice much later for him to authorize a payment. And he says at that time, I think it's the 19th of April, he thought that the payment had not been made and that he was authorizing a payment that would be made as opposed to one already made. And I think Dr. Nteta also had some interaction there with Mr. Opperman.
Okay, all right. But you said you have made your last question.
Yeah, that is in her affidavit.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Nteta, for availing yourself to assist the commission. You are now excused.
Thank you.
Let's take an adjournment. Let's take a short adjournment. We adjourn. Mr. Seleka and counsel for Ms. Klein, I indicated to Mr. Seleka that I have some commitment that would need us to take a break, maybe for about an hour, and then I would be back to start with Ms. Klein's evidence. And I apologize that we were going to have that break, but I understand that your preference would be that if we are not going to finish this evening with her evidence, you would prefer that we move her to a date when she can start and finish her evidence. And Mr. Seleka says, in terms of the lineup of witnesses tomorrow and looking at the time that they will take, he thinks that we could have Ms. Klein give evidence tomorrow and finish. And in the light of that, I am inclined to say, let's go along with that. I understand that there is a request also for her to give her evidence via video link because of some situation. I am able to allow that as well. So I just want both of you to confirm whether my understanding is correct and that it is fine if we do it this way.
Yes. Yes, Chairperson, that's the communication during the adjournment that took place between my learned friend and I, Mr. Mahon representing Ms. Venita Klein. I confirm what the Chairperson has said. Mr. Mahon can do likewise.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes.
I do confirm, and may we also request our thanks for the indulgence.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Okay, then we'll adjourn for the day, and then tomorrow Ms. Klein will appear via video link, and we will then have her evidence.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll liaise with my learned friend as to the
Yes,
practicalities.
yes, in terms of what time it's likely
That's
to be.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We then adjourn for the day. We
Thank you,
adjourn.